focus more and more on what your spiritual desires are, cultivating spiritual desires. Because spiritual growth is not affected by old age. You know, you can be very active and enjoying, but at some point that runs out and you can't do it. So there's an opportunity here to maybe think, well, maybe I better think about the end and what's going to happen when I leave this body. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. It's starting here too a little bit. I mean, up in the high country where, it was aspens, not aspens, they're birch, I guess, but they should be aspens. They're starting to turn a little bit, and all the big leaf summer growth, like the burdock and all these big leaf plants are turning yellow, and the Yvonne chai is all red, and it's beautiful up there.
Yeah, it's all got its rhythm. Yeah, which is really it's funny. Like old age, isn't that the same? the autumn of life.
Yeah, things change color, like your hair turns white, your beard turns white, your face turns pale.
It doesn't turn red or orange, your hair, that would be.
Yeah, it's no enhancing colors, man. Everything fades out.
Just fades.
Like your camera story. Just
that's the reality.
Yeah, the creaks and the cracks come about, and recently a friend of mine who is selling a supplement, health supplement, and I won't say the name because maybe we're not supposed to promote such things.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, it's a supplement that she sells, and she was telling me she's quite athletic, quite sporty. Runner, she's a backcountry skier and whatever. And she was telling me, man, after 1 month of taking this stuff, I was just flying up the mountains. I was just running. And she's got a dog, and said people were telling me, you got to slow down or you're going to kill that dog.
Uh-huh.
So she said, I want you to try it. So she sent me this stuff.
Are you flying up?
And it comes with a protein powder as well. So anyway, I've been taking it now for almost 2 months because I haven't been flying up any mountains, But I was going to say, you can take an old car, and I don't care how much high-octane fuel you put in it, it's still going to run like an old car. You're not going to get a Ferrari out of an old car just because you put some high-octane fuel in it.
That's very true.
So you got to deal with reality. But I have noticed that my digestion has improved, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
My whole digestive tract is
Wow.
working better than before. So, and I'm sure it's doing some good things. It's just that I'm not running up mountains like with a threat to killing dogs.
or your companions that are with you. Old age is also very romanticized. You just get old and you have all the free time to enjoy whatever, and your money that you've saved your life, and the pension, the rich pension that is waiting for you, and it's this golden age of life. It's very, you see all these positive things.
Yeah. But all that is created by young people.
That's true.
You talk to the old people about the golden years, and they'll tell you, old age is hell. Yeah, and then, you get less and less able to enjoy the world. Because you can't do whatever you used to do to enjoy the world. Your senses don't work as they used to. Your vision's, not as sharp. Your sense of smell or hearing. I mean, hearing is like almost a guarantee is going to diminish. So you got to depend on hearing aids or, People got to talk louder, or your tongue doesn't work like it did. Or even if the tongue is ferocious as before, which is not, but let's say it is, and you really just want to eat a lot of this because I like it, I like the taste and I like the texture, but you can't digest it. You take it down, it goes in your stomach, and then you got a huge problem. You can't digest it, it causes you so much irritation and gas and bloating and constipation or diarrhea or whatever. And not to mention, your mental facilities start to decline. You can't remember things, and
Yeah, it's true.
you can't, focus like you used to, and then of course now and more dementia and Alzheimer's is just skyrocketing. I mean, it was always around, but now the percentage is just so elevated. And on and on the gold of the golden years go. Yeah. You wake up in the morning, there's a pain what caused that? I didn't do anything. I didn't hit anything. I didn't bump it. I didn't twist it or nothing. But there's the pain, There's no reason, but there's a reason. It's called old age.
But yeah, what's your, like, in which way do you respond when you have all these things happening? In which way is it affecting you?
Well, like c'est la vie. C'est la vie. This is life, But I've been so fortunate because, my body's old, but I haven't got all those difficult symptoms and realities that I was just referring to. I can still do a lot of stuff that I want to do. Maybe not as quickly or with as much power or whatever, but I can still do things. I can still get out. I can still, do outside activities and not feel like it's killing me.
Yeah.
I have to stay in bed for a week afterwards. So I've been fortunate, but it's not by accident. I mean, of course, karma's a big part of it. I mean, we know that. You got a karma for this kind of, fortunate situation. That's good, and some don't.
It's just to design what's waiting for you in this life, how it's.
Yeah.
But
also, I have paid a lot of attention to my health my whole life.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
I mean, not just casually. And I can't say never, but in general, I never did things that I knew was going to be bad for my body, which for forever I thought was me. This is going to be bad for me. Well,
yeah.
But I just kind of intuitively knew that, you don't eat a lot of these foods because it's not good for you, You don't do this in excess. You don't take these substances. You don't do this because it's bad for you. And I always wanted to be healthy. I never wanted to be sick. And I was always concerned about the condition of my body.
What was your... No, I just wondered what your motivation was, like just to...
Well, it's a lot better to feel healthy than to feel sick.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do a lot of things that required good health to do it.
Yeah.
And you just can't, even if you can still do it when you're not healthy, and that's a lot of different levels of health. I'm not talking about just sick with the flu or something. I'm talking about you don't have the power. And also, I remember I was on a particular diet which didn't work. It seemed to work good for, 3-4 years. And then it just started, not being good. And I lost energy, I lost muscle mass, I lost a lot of things. And so I just didn't have any desire to go mountain biking, for instance.
No, really.
There it was, a nice place, very good bicycle, good weather, good, personal friends to go with who would say, let's go. I didn't want to go. And I knew something's really wrong here because I don't want to do it. It's not that I want to do it and I just will not because I don't feel good today. It's like I didn't even want to do it. And I said, man, this is so out of context, man. This is just like something's really wrong here. And that's when I started addressing that issue and, kind of understood what the problem was and corrected it and came back. But, first I thought, maybe it's parasites. So I did a whole parasite, study and research and cleanse, and that wasn't the problem, I couldn't admit that what the real problem was. I didn't want to admit it was because I was, put a lot of time and invest. I'd put a lot of investment in this,
Yeah.
But eventually I just went, yeah, man. Before this whole thing, I just, didn't have this problem, and so it was that's what it was. But anyway, the point is, that's all details. But the point is, I lost my desire to do things, which is what old people do. You can't enjoy the world, so you don't even want to. You don't have the desire to do it.
Yeah, well, so some people would say that that's good.
Well, it is good, but when we're not promoting material enjoyment. But for me, I like to bike or whatever. But it was also a way to stay healthy.
Yeah.
To move the body, to get out there and keep the body in good condition. And just sitting around, which is what happens when you don't feel good.
Exactly, and you just
the whole structure deteriorates.
Yeah, and it goes quickly.
And then there's a lot of mental stuff that goes with that too. And then that's why people, they start feeling bad, and then they quit exercising. They quit, lose all motivation. They start eating. They get obese. They develop all these, diseases that come from that, like, heart conditions or diabetes or, cancers appear, and on the story goes. Just because they don't feel good. And then you feel worse and worse, and the worse you feel, the less you're going to do something. And then you get depressed, and so, it's like, so it's a downward spiral.
Yeah.
So, part of the ingredients for a good quality of life is exercise and good food. Well, that's the yoga way, the right exercise and the right food for the right reason, not just to enjoy the world, but to just keep the machine that we've been given by the Lord himself to use in his service in a good condition so we can do that. And so, yeah. So, and like for us, you, myself, and other people who are following this process are convinced of the truth and the benefit, we want to give it to other people. We want to share it with other people. And if you're not feeling good, if you're struggling against physical and mental issues, you're not going to do very much. And your motivation and your strength and your enthusiasm and everything is really dampened. I mean, inside, below all that, there's a lot of enthusiasm, but that's a big obstacle.
When I don't do the duties that I should do and don't do the exercise and getting up early in the morning, there's also the result that everything becomes more of a struggle unless you have less, like you said, less power, less.
I mean, if you understand what the body is really, it's the gift that we've been given this time around from the Lord to develop spiritually, to become self-realized, to use it in his service, etc. I mean, that's the function of the body, physical and mental. And it's really not ours. It's just, we're the stewards of the body.
Mm.
Just like if a rich man gives, the driver his car to use, and keep it in good condition to be used for my benefit. And the driver neglects it, doesn't change the oil, doesn't keep it tuned up, doesn't clean it, just lets it turn into a heap of trash. How pleased is the owner going to be?
And never uses it for the owner, uses it for his own purposes and showing it off to his friends and look at.
And not even that. I mean, he just neglects it. If it, he's not even trying to make it spiff for his friends. He's just so lazy. He just lets it just go downhill. So the body is a tool to be used properly in the service of the Lord. Therefore, we should keep it in good condition. And that's going to make it so when old age comes, in theory, I mean, everybody's an individual with their individual karma and so on. You're going to be doing better than if you didn't do that. Let's put it like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I remember there was a man in Australia. I think I mentioned this once before on a podcast way back, but his name was Jim. I'm sure we mentioned it. And he lived next door to where I was staying. And he was 72 at the time. But from the back, you would think he was in his 20s. I mean, he was so fit looking. When you saw his face, then, there was some wrinkles and signs of his age. But other than that, he was so fit. And he said, friends of mine come to me and say, Jim, how do you maintain your health? How do you stay so fit and strong? Mm-hmm. And he said, well, for you, it's too late, because I started years and years ago. He said, you just can't now, in your condition and your age, think you can bring it back to my condition. He said, I've been doing this my whole life, And so that's kind of how it is, And he was getting after it. I think I told you he had a kayak that he would paddle way, way across to a point in the ocean and back, pretty much every day, and just dig big holes in the sand and then fill them back in.
Well,
just for the exercise.
Yeah. Well, we don't have to go so far for an example of this. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, you got to do something.
I mean, one point that the body changes, but the desires are the same. The person inside is the same. So, how is that? How do you experience that?
What are you talking about? Physical desires, material desires?
Well, maybe that's the point that people don't. Yeah.
I mean, there's two categories of desire: material desire and spiritual desire. So yeah, I mean, material desires are like, well, I really want to do all these things, but my body just doesn't allow it anymore. So for some people, that's a real mental turmoil kind of thing, and you just got to accept that. I mean, this is not a surprise. It's like, this has been coming ever since you were born, and you just kind of have to understand, well, I can't do what I used to do. I have to just tone it back. But the real, solution, if you will, or correct approach is, focus more and more on what your spiritual desires are, cultivating spiritual desires.
Right.
So you can grow spiritually. Because spiritual growth is not affected by old age. We're talking about bodies and minds here that are affected by old age. But we're the spirit souls in spiritual growth, which means coming closer and closer in our relationship with the Supreme Lord can actually be enhanced when the body can't do all the things to enjoy the world that it used to do. And that's part of the arrangement of the Lord, that, you can be very active and enjoying, but at some point that runs out and you you can't do it. So there's an opportunity here to maybe think, well, maybe I better think about the end and what's going to happen when I leave this body and start preparing for that. And it's no longer like theoretical, way down the road somewhere I'm going to get old and die. It's like, here I am, and I got to start getting really serious about this. And yeah. So a lot of people become more spiritually serious in their old age. I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say a lot of people, some people. Because a lot of people don't, And I mean, you've been to old age homes and seen people in their last moments and all kind of deterioration of the bodies and so on. But they're not all just, searching the scriptures for the truth and, begging to know the answers to life and so on. They're just still trying to enjoy that next meal at the canteen or, the last lick of the ice cream.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
But there is a point where it isn't too late, but you know what I mean? Kind of it's too late. Like you can't make the decision anymore to go to meditation class or associate with the people who are spiritually elevated or, because you're so deteriorated that your mind doesn't work, your body doesn't work, maybe you should have done some things earlier. I mean, you can still listen and if you're fortunate.
Yeah. I mean, everybody should do something earlier.
Yeah.
Because, not everybody lives to be old, do they? That's the idea that you have when you're young. That somewhere you're going to get old and whatever. And a lot of people put off any kind of spiritual pursuits thinking, well, I still got a lot of years left. And when I get old, then I'll get serious. But by then you develop so many habits and so many attachments and just such a materialistic, view of life and the world. And, that, even if you hear the truth, you just can't relate to it or, you're too covered or it's.
And what you said before, you invested too much in a certain thing or a certain lifestyle, then it's really hard to give up. Like you invested your whole life and living the belief that you're your body and this body is meant to give you happiness and the recipe for happiness in the world, etc. So it's the more you get entrenched in that, it's going to be harder and harder to give up.
Yeah. Your friend that was just helping her uncle leave her body. I don't know if you've talked to her since then, but she's got a nice story. It worked well, and he was atheist, up until it became obvious he was going to die of cancer. And as the cancer progressed, he became more and more receptive and, playing the mantras. Her father really was vocal in helping this whole thing unfold. And, the mantras and the reality he's going to have to leave his body and her being there and telling him, in a very correct and gentle way and so on, what the reality was and how the mantras could help. Anyway, the whole thing just very quickly, really over some months, became very favorable. And he left his body in very favorable conditions. Very. So it's never too late.
Yeah.
But he was fortunate because he had her to just step into his life at this time, and they had a good relationship before, so it wasn't like some stranger coming in. It was like, there was some relationship of affection and trust and, so on, and, understanding she was really trying to help him. And then her father got on board, and, her father, he was her father's little brother, so he had that relationship. But I know that's not common. That's not every day. That was a very unique situation, you know. But the majority of people don't have anything close to that. So that's why, the more people that hear these podcasts and start, thinking about, wow, maybe I should think more about who I am, what I should do with my life, my spiritual life, rather than just focusing on, my material arrangement. And
because that's prone to change. If not, then with old age, it's gonna
absolutely going to change. Nothing stays the same. There's songs that songwriters have, made that declaration many, many different times in many different ways. Nothing stays the same, And so expect change materially and understand you, the spirit soul, are changeless, but you can change the way you use the body and the mind to come to that eternal, changeless world. So it's a real project that everybody should embark on.
So you leave your body and you lose everything, and you have to start all over again.
Yeah, and you do. I mean, look back at when you were born. What all those skills and all those abilities and so on that you might have had in your past life, where are they now? You can't walk.
Yeah.
You don't even know how to eat.
Yeah.
You can't control your bowels. What can you do? You can't relate to anybody. You can't understand what they say. They can't understand what you say. So obviously you lost everything, and now you got to learn it all over again. You got to learn math. You got to learn English or whatever your language. You got to learn how to read. You got to learn how to write. You got to learn how to.
So if you don't like the school, then you should listen to our podcast and do what we tell you to avoid going back to school in your next life.
That's right. You can't dress yourself. You can't express. What can you do? You can't do anything but make trouble for other people.
That sounds a lot like you're describing old age now as well, by the way.
Whine and cry and, be... Well, there's a saying that is absolutely true, and I heard it long before I reached an elderly number of years, that twice a baby, once a man. You understand that? Twice a baby, once a man.
Oh,
you're a baby when you're born.
Okay.
You got to wear diapers. You got to eat pablum. You can't do this and that. Then you're a man. Oh, you can do all kinds of strong stuff. I'm a man. And then old age, you got to wear diapers. You got to eat pablum. You got to have somebody take care of you, etc. You're right back to where you started. Drooling all over the place, and twice a baby, once a man.
Welcome to the reality podcast. Yeah, but it's true.
Yeah, it's certainly true.
But
so it's not a pretty picture, but it's a true picture.
You don't need to be that worried in a sense. You're here, and if you're listening and if you're trying to do spiritual progress, you'll never lose that. So that's the positive side to the story.
Don't worry about it. Just do something about it. This is the point. We these truths sometimes are very disturbing to people, and they worry about it. We're not saying worry about it. Just do something about it. You got the time. You got the opportunity. Just do something. Don't sit around with some kind of denial story going on. Oh, I don't want to think about it. It's not going to happen to me. Or
Yeah, I see what you mean.
It's too negative. Just do something. Yeah. And maybe they will. Here's something so simple. Just chant these mantras. Come on. How hard is that?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I guess we could chant
Yeah, we could.
if we have other
Disturbing things to say.
Yeah, exactly. I spoke to
But here's an unfortunate reality: is most of the people that really get involved in spiritual life start when they're young. I mean, reality is, somewhere way down the road, somebody might have some dramatic experience that turns them to God or whatever. But the people who really, take it seriously and dedicate their life to it, most of them start when they're young. When you're at that time, well, what am I going to do with my life kind of thing? And, something, just makes it so you go in that direction. I mean, when we give our class, how many really old people come to your classes?
Not so many.
No,
Maybe,
but not so many. And if they do they come and they hear it and then they go home? They don't really, most of the time, don't take it too seriously because it's
very, very rarely. But I know. I mean, you can say what you're gonna say. I'm just thinking a point could be that perhaps it's difficult to listen. Here's this young guy telling me all these uncomfortable truths they should do and chant and all of these things, and maybe it's difficult to.
Yeah. Well, that's a reason. That's one reason. But yeah. Anyway, for whatever reason, it's unfortunate. It'll be one way for one person, one way for another person. Yeah. So, yeah, that's another myth that people that are old know everything. Wise old man. Well, it doesn't mean that every old man is wise. And a person can be very young and be the most wise. I mean, our scripture, Srimad-Bhagavatam, which is one of the most amazing scriptures ever. The whole thing was spoken by a 16-year-old, fully self-realized person, Sukadeva Goswami, to a king, who was Maharaj Parikshit. And the king fully accepted the 16-year-old boy as his absolute spiritual guide to guide him to his death, which was going to take place 7 days away. He had the understanding that he was going to be killed in 7 days. And so he wanted to use the last 7 days that he had in that body to gain as much spiritual understanding and knowledge, etc., purification as possible. And so he went to the bank of the Ganges River to seek out a person who could guide him most perfectly in his last 7 days in that body. And Sukadeva Goswami was that personality who came and did that. You see? So, he had the vision to see, I need help, and this is the perfect person to give my full attention to. And so it's described how they had this conversation. For 7 days and 7 nights, they did not eat, they did not sleep. There was no interruption. 7 days and 7 nights. And in that time, the whole Srimad-Bhagavatam was spoken.
Which is volumes of books, which is, I don't know how many books.
Volumes. It's 18,000 verses.
Wow.
And so, but you could say, well, how is that possible? Well, because of the situation and the focus and the divine arrangement. they weren't sitting there, distracted by hunger and thirst and lack of sleep. It was a divine intervention here that, overcame those physical obstacles. And, but anyway, the point is, young, very young person, enlightened, an old king. So, but I agree with what you said, people can look at it the other way. I'm old, I'm wise, I've been through life, I know what life's about, and here's some young whippersnapper trying to tell me what I should do. Yeah. But I have found that when people are, obviously going to leave their body, that's come to that point, they become very different very quick. They become way more receptive and way softer in general. I'm not saying everybody, but in general. Yeah. Okay, we could run it on, but yeah, why don't we have a little kirtan?
I think we can do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Because no matter what subject we talk about, kirtan is the answer. It is. I mean, it's not like we can talk about anything, but it all comes back to I'm spirit, soul, and spiritual life is my life, and kirtan is the absolute perfect way to come to that realization and perfection.
No.
Yeah. So that being said, birth, death, old age, and disease.
Let's go. Just chant.
You can chant when you're young, you can chant when you're old. You can, may the last breath come out with the name of the Lord. Run. Haribo, Goranga, Goranga, Haribo.
Haribo, Goranga, Goranga, Haribo.
Haribo,
Haribo, Goranga, Goranga, Haribo.
Haribo, Goranga, Goranga, Haribo. Haribo, Goranga, Goranga, Haribo.
Haribo, Goranga, Goranga, Haribo. Haribo, Goranga, Goranga, Haribo.
Haribo,
Haribo,
Goranga, Haribo.
Goranga, Haribo.
Haribo,
Haribo,
Goranga, Haribo.
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 Hare Hare Haribo.
Hari, Hari, 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 Haribo.
Ranga. Haribo. Oh, once again, very easy to do. Very, regardless of the age. I'm getting an echo. Strong. Yeah. So, yeah. Regardless of the age and situation. You know, even when you become so debilitated you can't speak, you can hear. A friend of mine just left his body due to ALS, which is a completely physically debilitating story. I told you about that. Anyway, you know, quite some months before he left his body, he couldn't speak because it just makes it so the message from your brain to the organ that you're trying to use or the muscles or whatever never gets there. It never gets there. So he could think, I want to say something, but he couldn't say it. He could kind of make some sounds, but he couldn't formulate. But he could hear. And so he just focused on hearing the mantras, hearing this philosophy, hearing these words of truth. See? And even if it got so you couldn't hear or speak, you can still think. You know, you can have the mantras in your mind.
That's true. Yeah.
If they've been there before, of course. You know. And yeah, so from the to the last moment, you can access the mantras, bathe in the mantras, revel in the mantras, glorify the mantras. You know. Yeah. So, yeah. So the mantras are our best friend. That's declared in Scripture. That's declared by the great spiritual authorities. Make them your friend. Make them your friend. Don't just neglect them. If you make somebody your friend, you don't neglect them, right?
No, I don't.
I mean, you're not going to make very good friends with somebody you totally neglect. So that's the idea, you know. Don't neglect the mantras. Bring them into your life. Associate with them. Cultivate that relationship. And have a real friendship with the mantras, which are no different than that relationship with the Lord. Old, young, in between, doesn't matter. Yeah. So again, just in case somebody didn't, you know, or let's say in case somebody got the wrong message from what we were saying in the beginning, we're not promoting just go out and enjoy the world. Have a healthy body so you can go out and, you know, capitalize on all the sensual pleasures.
No, I don't.
So if that's what you heard, you know, we're trying to correct that understanding. You know, no. Spiritual life is the goal, and having a very fit body and mind is a big asset. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, Ruben, we'll see you, and everybody will see you next time.
For some more bad news, tune in next week.
All right. The bad news, what may sound like bad news is good news.
Because there's a solution. Yeah. Well, thank you very
It's
much.
the good
Fabian.
news,
Thank you.
really.
Haribol. Haribol. See you, everyone.
All right. Namaste. Haribol.